I was not anticipating doing another stream today to overcrowd, subscribers with loads and loads of content that, might go on for tens of minutes. But I felt compelled to discuss a story I just became aware of, and also how it fits into a broader issue that I think a lot of us aren't noticing because we just see the headline and then we're done with it afterward. So, let me say hello to Envoy. A California mother has been arrested in the death of her 7-month old daughter after police say she initially mowed down her daughter with the car as he held the baby. Ontario Police Sergeant Jeff Higbee says 19-year-old Sarah Mary Gomez was taken into custody early Tuesday morning on charges of murder and attempted murder. She is being held on $1 million bail. According to Higbee, Gomez and her 21-year-old boyfriend are arguing late Monday when they had been drinking at a family event. The couple left the gathering with their baby girl and headed home, but got into an argument in the car. Higbee says the boyfriend got out of the dark colored Chevrolet with the baby, and that is when Gomez ran them over in the 500 block of West D Street in Ontario shortly before midnight. A relative took the injured man and his infant daughter to a hospital where the child succumbed to her injuries. Gomez's boyfriend sustained non-life threatening scrapes and was expected to recover. A neighbor of the couple in Ontario told ABC7 the boyfriend appears to be a doting father and was often seen carrying his daughter in his arms. So, what do we take away from that? The father's around or has survived, the child hasn't. Mother was 19, guy was 21. And by the way, the only reason I'm singling it out by age this time around is because I want to test my own narrative, because I always try to say that it's more so having to do with the character of the people involved. Because a lot of us, whether we're 14 or 24, have the intellectual capacity to say, this is a kid. Let me make sure that nothing happens to it. Let me not act out in some barbaric, emotional, ridiculous manner. But I've noticed a running theme with a lot of these stories. I'm going to read some more after I get through making this point where the parent, I mean, I have four right now I'm going to read, three after the one I just read, and the oldest parent is 20. So let me read this. And this is from March. So this is all within the last year. Let me say a little dark. A 17-year-old El Paso woman is facing a capital murder charge for the stabbing and death of her newborn child earlier this month. El Paso Sheriff's deputy says Erica Gomez was arrested Friday. Authorities say she gave birth to a baby girl at her home, and the child was found dead about 12 hours later on February 9th, wrapped in a bathrobe inside a storage shed. Investigators say the child was left there immediately after birth and that the baby had stab wounds and cuts to her neck and body. Deputies found the dead child after they'd been summoned to the home to do a welfare check. Gomez is jailed on an $800,000 bail, or bond rather. So I don't think she'll be getting out anytime soon. I mean, these people can't even afford condoms, much less $800,000. Okay, next story. This is from March as well. The mother of a baby and a toddler was arrested on suspicion of first-degree murder after the children were found dead in car seats inside a vehicle, and authorities discovered evidence of foul play. Officials said Tuesday. Pinal County Sheriff's Office spokeswoman Navade, whatever that last name is, said the children found in the vehicle at a home in the town of Superior were 2 years old and 10 months old. The car was located in the 100 block of North Richard Avenue. The children's mother, 20-year-old Brittany Velasquez, is being charged with 2 counts of murder. She had been booked in the Pinal County Jail and had an initial hearing Tuesday afternoon in Pinal County Superior Court in Florence. Forgani said evidence at the scene suggested foul play and autopsies will be conducted to determine the causes of death. Some relatives of the children were inside the home when authorities went to the crime scene late Monday night. But Forgani said she could not provide information about the circumstances of how the children were placed or left in the car. Superior Police Department Sergeant Christian Ensley, the town's interim police chief, said murders are rare in the small mining town. So this incident has had an immediate impact in the community. Okay, that's enough there. So these 2 children were left in this car, burned up to death. Awful. Um, Actually, foul play. I take that back. So I wasn't even paying attention to the whole story. But one interesting thing to point out: the woman was 20 in this. They said one kid was 2 years old, the other one was 10 months old. So that means the oldest one was born when she was in either her last year of high school or right after high school. So again, it will be important later. I'm just pointing it out. Um, this other story happened in February. This is the chronological earliest story out of these four I've just told. The mother of a baby who died in a car crash involving an off duty police officer was arrested on account of negligent homicide for failing to secure the child's car seat weeks after the Baton Rouge police officer who crashed into their car at 94 miles an hour was arrested on the same charge. Brittany Stevens, 20, was arrested Tuesday after police found that the child's car seat was not secured and that the straps were not adjusted correctly for the child's size. An arrest report states. The advocate reported. Police said the lacking of securing the seat to the vehicle and the loose straps were a contributing factor in the death of the child and showed gross negligence. Stevens was not at the wheel during the crash but claimed responsibility for securing the child's car seat. She was booked into prison Tuesday on one count of negligent homicide and a seatbelt violation. Three other adults in the car were issued traffic citations Tuesday. And they're going on about how much she's being held for, which surprisingly is only $3,000, and that's much smaller than all the other stuff. The vehicle's 8 occupants were taken to the hospital, and Sayara Stevens, one, later died from her injuries. So that is this woman's child. Okay, so now that I've read these stories, and also I want to point out something. That the reason I'm going back to the age thing is because if I listed all the stories where a mother or just the parent of a kid killed that child or had something to do with the death, we'd be here all night. But I wanted to test this theory because a lot of times you have people who will come on here and they'll say, why are you so worried about this? You're so young. Why do you, want to do this at this? Blah, blah, blah. And I've tried to explain you need to stop thinking about the fact of, how many days someone's been alive because, we all have some basic comprehension of how long the world's been in function. And many of these, countries aren't the U.S. People who are, 13, 14 actually have to learn how to do things before they can go around and lay up in bed and have these children they're not going to take care of at all once they pop them out. In some countries, 14-year-olds can get married, they can own their own property. There's loads of things that are allotted to people with very little concern for whether or not they're reaching their second or third decade. That's why when I see these comments about, this person looks as if they have all this time in the world, and then we have individuals getting murdered in waves, it almost is incomprehensible. They really sit here and think you have nothing but time. But again, so to go back to the main purpose of this, you have a system that preaches these a couple of ideas. You have themes of the mother is the one who can take care of the child. The mother is going to be more sympathetic. The mother is a better parent because she's actually there. And look, I'll tell you this fully and with no level of lack of candor whatsoever at all. In a lot of circumstances, with these unions that result in these absentee fathers, the mother that's left behind is either mediocre at best or just absolute crap. In many of these impoverished communities, they're not in that state because, this parent is working so hard and, I don't know, Trump or whoever's the president or the governor is coming in and taking their cash from their pockets. The reason is because these parents work some medium, frankly put it, subpar job as far as, trying to raise a family off of. And then they'll try to spin it around and say, oh, I was working so hard and trying to do things for my child. When in reality, that kid is the almost embarrassment that they have to live with, the shame for the fact that they chose to be irresponsible with their private parts. And, the same thing with these guys. But what's all the more catastrophic about this is that all of these different murders that I just described, to these different killings and deaths of small children, they all have the similarity of being by a parent who reacted with emotion rather than logic. And I know people like to say, oh, you can't read too much into things, but I'm sorry. How hard is it for someone that is, 20? This isn't like a 10-year-old little kid to put a child, secure them properly in a car. How hard is that? And ask yourself, do you have to be 20 to do that, or just are you just not of any level of intellect, or do you just not care? I think it was just her not caring. It certainly seems easier for people to jump up in bed, but when it comes to something so minute and simple, they are extremely lazy. To put O'Donoghue's words in my own mouth, to quote him. Which also, I haven't seen many of the comments that have been written other than that one. Let me go look. I will say the only redeeming thing about the story with, and also you have to ask yourself this: as I read those stories, and we'll probably post links to these articles if you guys want them. Ask yourself a couple of questions. Go back to the main one, the title of this video, the 19-year-old that ran over her daughter and baby daddy. They said she was drunk in this report, and if I remember, that's against the law. So that's one thing they won't point out while you're reading that story, while you're just scrolling through there. But I want to figure out, does anyone else think that it is the age of the parents, the fact that the parents are just terrible people, or a little bit of both? Because I can name other stories we've had where there's a 30, 40-year-old that's doing God knows what to its kid. And if you want to go back old school, we can pick up the Kaylee Anthony case, where I think, how old was Casey? I think 18, 20. Same thing, where they just, instead of saying to themselves, I'm going to have a child, I'm going to raise it right, I don't care how old I am, they will say, okay, well, I just got this little high school diploma, I'm not going to do anything with except drop out of college with, let me go and lay up in bed and get knocked up, and then when the kid comes out, I'm going to murder it or do something else that's against its best interest. Does anyone else see this, the problem here, or what I'm getting at? In the poor neighborhoods or in any neighborhoods, the parents are at fault if the child is lost. Um, yeah, I agree. Look, what I'm trying to convey to you is that I had a commenter wrote a while ago that you can't blame the parents for what their grown kids do. But what we're starting to see, and I keep trying to point this out to you, is that not you in particular, Dirk, but just in general, you have a lot of these kids who can't even make it out of their childhoods because of the severity associated with their parents and their actions. They go out and do these really, really negligent things, um, and it ends up backfiring on the child to where it can't even survive that circumstance. You know, people have really tried to make the case that when you have um, both parents involved, or one involved, it automatically will make things better. It automatically will improve a circumstance. But what I don't understand is why we don't have any laws involved. And I've mentioned this before. Why don't we have anything that says you can't just get out of high school, lay up in bed, and then get on the county after you pop out your kid who you're either going to murder, or if you do keep them around, treat like some second class citizen when it comes to their needs and priorities. The reason you have so many people who call themselves backing the idea of free college, and they're high school now or just in some lower grade, is because their parents, in a lot of cases, this isn't all of them obviously, um, chose to go and buy little gadgets and gizmos and various other things you can probably think of, as opposed to saving up for them. Because like I said before, in many of these cases, the circumstances that cause these children to get made is because the mother and the father decide to lay up in bed with no thoughts of next week, next year, next decade. And guess what happens when the parent is left, the mother in most cases is left with some child that in 18 years is going to, or sooner is going to college or supposed to be going to college if it wants to improve its, up its class or its social standing. You know that parent isn't thinking about 18 years from now when it's spending its cash on frivolous things. He or she, it probably isn't even thinking about next year. That's why you have such high enrollments to these in these schools, all these children over there, and then you ask them basic questions and they can't give you an answer. And I've tried to really make it clear that my sympathy for a lot of people, especially when you start looking into the do's and don'ts of their stories, runs thinner and thinner with each passing year because in being a person who sat here and actively, and I'll convey to you entirely right now, it aggravates me probably more than maybe anything else. The circumstance with women and turning down all that nonsense, but what is so bothersome is this idea because I could accept, I'm just this reject, and suddenly, all these different couples are so in love and they're such great parents, and oh, their kid is going to have a wonderful life, but we're getting the reverse of that. And, in seeing this happen over and over again, and knowing the difficulty that many of my viewers, have had with people in general when it comes to these interactions, it gets to be this constant headache because you're watching someone else, the child, in a lot in these cases, have their life destroyed by the incompetence, the stupidity, and the mind-numbing retardation that you've experienced yourself with people of this same age group. The only difference now is that I've noticed the way it seems to go with a lot of these, contemporary women is that they either make the decision to, if they're having children, have them right after high school with no means of support and relying on the father, and if he goes, then they're just gone to county, or they call themselves being, and this is something I think VVS has run into from his descriptions, uh, party girls, and doing little fast and furious type things until they're 30 or 40 or whatever middle-aged denomination you could give them. Has anyone else noticed that similarity where it seems like the only two categories women come in nowadays is young baby mamas or party girls, where they just will stay dating different guys, thankfully never having some child out of nowhere, and do repeat that process year after year after year, decade after decade, until they're either going middle aged or close to not being able to do it anymore. I've actually never seen you say that before, Cortez. I don't even think they're mentally ill because I keep seeing from what's being done by ones I've personally known. They just, after they pop the kid out, they decide to turn it into a doll and post pictures of it online. Imagine if I had a child and every time I did a video, uh, right behind me you see its stroller and oh my god, look at this, so cute. That's what they do. As anyone else knows that on social media, any mother that is relatively young, it seems, just turns their kid into a prop for pictures after popping it out, after getting pumped and dumped by whatever guy she's familiar with. Anyone else notice that? Really, the only times I don't see someone outright doing that, it feels like it's just when they're not on social media at all. Okay, Cortez says teen pregnancy causes mental illness depending on the age. Those are trophy babies. It seems like it, and what's worse is that um, I do not care. Your comment, the last one you left, and this is why I didn't say anything to you. It was held back by the automated system that does it whenever somebody uses a swear word. So I showed it, but again, you do not swear, or else the system will hold your comment back. It did one of the same things with Cortez's comment, the fourth to last. Um, which responding to Cortez. So I was going to point out one of the things I've noticed when it comes to, and this is a claim that the guy made a while back. was that supposedly if you have a person who has a child, let's say when they're right out of high school or something, their mind frame freezes at that time, and they can't. It's like if you were to write a book, and then the character development for the character is like concluded by the third or fourth chapter, and that thing's like 50 or 60 chapters long. They literally have a stint growth after the child comes out, and the hypothesis I saw said that's why you have so many of these mothers who still, going into their 40s, 50s, are still buying all this different stuff and not actively trying to save up for the circumstance of their childhood. By that point, if it's managed to go with that, and we know if it's a male, it's going to have an easier time to go without, having a child itself. It will become used to this idea that, okay, my parent just doesn't care about me, or these other things matter more. It's one of those two things, and the child's screwed either way, because they're going to say to themselves, well, my parent can spend all this cash from this different stuff. That means they're not concerned with these things because they're, whatever negative term you could use. Or it has the reverse effect where the child says, oh well, if these things aren't considered important by my parent, they must not be important to me either. So it's that mindset they gain from a circumstance. And look, I always like to say, Cortez says 45-year-old grandma still going to the club. It sure seems like it. And look, I always have this hard feel, because what I've tried to make it known is that most of us, if you asked us, or you said about this story because the child's dead, or because you think you would do a better job, most of us would probably say both. Because I have no problem boasting about how most people that regularly watch this stuff would do a better job than the parents depicted in the story. Really, the only one that seemed that slightly concerned was the father, the one that got ran over with his daughter. That was the only one that appeared to actually kind of have the mindset of decency I'm talking about, and that's a very rare thing. If you notice in all the other stories, the guy just wasn't around. They just like, oh, she reproduced asexually. That's kind of how it looks after 10 years. You don't see the father around anymore, or next week, he just disappeared. Then again, doing better than those monsters. Yeah, but what I'm trying to convey here is that there are very few issues you can talk about to get a majority of people to say, yeah, that's gross. Um, and when you talk about patterns of behavior that ruin lives and destroy the lives that the people involved created, mind you, more often than not, you get in at least most cases, unanimous, universal acclaim for saying, yeah, that's disgusting. It's just a common sense type of deal, because most of us have some basic level of humanity. We might sit behind fake accounts and write all manners of evil, but most of us will not enjoy or get off on the thought of someone, especially someone that young, who's so innocent, couldn't control what its parents were, of course, getting destroyed by just being brought up into a circumstance it couldn't control. Cortez says no men, just women and children. That's why I call the Amazons. Well, that's why I was making reference to, that the dad just disappears, and in all these stories you saw no father except for one. Now, how much you willing to bet? Now, if I go down the list and pick out some more stories where the parents are, of varying other ages, it will be the same thing, because people have this, and I've tried to really explain what is being experienced with a lot of guys right now, um, and how these women behave with their own children are toe in toe. That doesn't mean if you get turned down, the mother's going to go and have a kid and go and treat it like trash, but ask yourself if you can see the correlation between this person, calling you all manners of evil, and you're supposed to not be able to talk about it, or else you're whatever, and then you are, yeah, Cortez, they get pregnant by Casper, and then all of a sudden, they're doing the same thing in their own lives with people that are not just the random guy in high school or in college, someone that they're supposedly involved with, supposed to be the main backer of in the world because they're the parent and they just screw their lives up. So it should be scarier to the people who call themselves sticking up for a lot of these modern women because ask yourself, would you want someone who's been described in the story by me, and these articles are public information, everybody can look them up, to be the mother of your child? I certainly wouldn't. You saw the guy in that story seem to have his head on right, and then he gets, assaulted, vehicular assault by his girlfriend, and she would probably defend herself by saying, "Oh, I was mad, but you were so mad you had to run over both him and the child that you popped out last year. That if you were to go on any of her social media posts, she'd probably say she loved." Again, that's how just contradictory people are now. Cortez and Dirk are the only people speaking. O'Donohue went to bed, and Envoy is making out with his ex-wife. They're reconciling. To tell him to get a room. Oh, it's a very disturbing circumstance, and what has been conveyed by me, since I started paying more attention to these stories, is that they've really reinforced the idea that when someone lives a supposedly successful life, it doesn't mean they're all well put together. Like, for example, I remember back in, I think it was February of last year. This is around the same time I put out the Why Don't Approach Anymore video. There was a woman who posted something she posted about 5 or 6 pictures. And the first one was, well, the tagline was, I sent a DM to my high school crush, and this is what happened. First, the picture of them, the two of them together, then her knocked up, then the baby, then them with the baby. And I'll never forget one of the comments, and this is what it said. Literally wrote, commenters rather, said, she's cute, he's cute, their baby's cute, they just winning. And I almost wanted to just slap myself in the face, because you're telling me that having a reproductive system that allowed, based off of your genes, a child to look attractive in the faces of random users online is what is considered winning. Dirk says, why is that romanticized / glorified? Because people have no brains. That's what it is. When they're writing all that stuff online, they don't show the same mental capacity that a lot of us would probably be able to just put out. Wait, Envoy, what did you just say? Selective breeding. Shh. Be very quiet. How dare you tell them they can't have children, they love each other. That's all that matters. Now if they have the financial resources and are able to go and give it an accurate and well-meaning life. Let me say hello to Old School Music. BVS says relationships are just show and tell. It feels like it. And look, I always hope that people, because we already know people write nasty stuff about me. They write nasty stuff about anyone else that frequents this channel or just frequents the internet. But I always hoped that a parent, at least a mother, at the very least, as society likes to tell us, would treat her child with more importance than herself, would say, this is what came out of me. This is the thing I need to be the most concerned with. My life's to revolve around this thing. And it's been the antithesis of that. And it's not that way just because we've seen mothers physically go out and murder their own kids. It's if you remember the stream about the children that were killed by the boyfriends and the guys that they were left with that their mothers were seeing, it is a recurring theme in this world that the keys to becoming a parent, to being given control over someone else's life, are not one's financial position, not one's proven capability to exercise selflessness over an individual that they call themselves caring for. It's just having some, parts that I guess they think are attractive going inside of each other and a pretty face, male or female. That's it. And it's what needs to be understood is that as I've talked about these things. Well, I want this, I want that. All of that's designed with the purpose of telling you it's that mentality which is so reversed by contemporary people that if you went back 5, 6 decades from now, if people were doing this, it would have almost been case for a trial. It was not considered normal to go around and, oh, I think you look cute, let's hop in bed, and if I get knocked up, oh, let's decide to not take care of the offspring. That was never thought of. Even when people had shotgun marriages, where you get somebody pregnant, you marry them, that was always designed with the purpose of, okay, Mister, I can't keep it in my pants. How about you decide to go and pay some responsibility and time to what you involved yourself with? I'm gonna read some of these comments soon, but let me just also say that you have many people. I've actually had I think two people on here start talking about you're old fashioned and say, yeah, it's, and that the reason for that position is because it's been proven the contemporary model doesn't work. If contemporary relationships were truly something that I just as this crazy individual can understand, why do I have a number of friendships that have endured the test of time? Why is it that you have people who call themselves being all into talking to loads of individuals, admitting that they only have maybe 2, 3 people that they would consider their actual friends? Why is it a bad thing to outright condemn something for what it is, which is to say that a majority of us don't get along with each other on any friendly level? That's why we should leave each other alone. A majority of us are disturbed and disgusted by the conduct of quote unquote parents who are only parents because they were able to spread their legs and reproduce. And lots of us are fully cognizant of the fact that we'd be better in these positions than the people who, again, are only able to do it because one has a pretty face and the other one has a pretty face. So let me read these quotes here, and then I'll get back to making my point. Cleo says he agrees with VVS. Envoy says in a lot of cases, women see children as guaranteed checks from the government and deadbeat fathers. VVS, Cortez says VVS exactly. Envoy says when fathers see children as a hustle or just a nut that managed to swim the distance. VVS, as soon as I see it, as the stream ends, scroll on Facebook, I guarantee you'll see a new story equivalent to this one. Uh, I guess we just have to keep streaming. We'll never end it. Cortez says, AJ, the deadbeat father thing is exaggerated myth. Envoy says, it's not a myth. I'm not one of those guys who just point out the faults in women. I point out the faults in men too. There are many who do not take care of their children and are absent. Yeah, and I've also stated before, part of the reason I don't have loads of people I talk to is because I recognize what I feel are inadequacies in the males I'm around. Whether that's the lack of commitment, the lack of trying to keep a dialogue going. It's just no one has time to sit there and send somebody 7 or 8 messages over and over again. And there are guys who got with a woman who actually, was serious about being a parent or at least taking care of the life they created, and bailed on them, sold them some false goods, and ran out. And obviously, someone can make the argument of they should have been married first, and that way there's a lesser chance of happening. But you have to understand, people have gotten horny to the point now where they don't want to accept the fact that there are serious ramifications oftentimes in just having these, relationships. 'Cause, without actually being committed to that person. Cortez says, "What if the man never wanted a kid?" Yeah, obviously, I think sometimes in this stream we tend to overlook the faults in men because we're all and are bad, which is not the case. Well, I've never said that. I've acknowledged faults in men over, multiple times. That again, that's why I have the position that I do on the you know on people in general. Just when in trying to have ongoing talks with them. What needs to be understood is that this is not an attack women's stream or channel or any of that. It started off as being disgruntled with dating, and trying to actually court some of them or any of them at all. Um, and it's slowly morphed into this thing where I just express my frustrations with both genders because both of them have had subpar members. Um, and sometimes I'll mix in some stuff about the media, so I know the media won't frame it the way I'm doing right now. But like I said, um, it really doesn't matter what your ideology is when it comes to just dating nowadays. You've had many media sources that'll tell you, women are so pure and wonderful, and they don't want to get with guys that are Klansmen or alt right or any of this other nonsense. And I told you, go look up the Southern Strategy. Most of those men who signed that were married. Look up any world leader in history, and you'll find out that they had somebody they were shacking up with. And look, I'm not, we've talked about that in the past. I'm not going to go that much further into it, but I really do want to solve this problem. Does anyone else feel there's a pattern of women who are not yet physically or mentally rather mature to go out and become a parent? Because look, it's hard for me to believe that women who like I've seen chicks in my circle of living who at 17 were posting pictures of their behind on I don't know Instagram. At 18 were writing tweets where they were talking about n-word this this person that all this little drama online. And then at 19, she's gonna have a baby because this guy he he had her and him got true love, yeah. And then you come back to her a year later, she's dating another guy. So I can never take them seriously. Like and the thing is when you know the person before they became a parent and you see them act immature, they're not taking care of themselves. The only reason anybody likes them is because of what they have in between their legs. It's completely believable to me that the person is just there to be a dumpster for the sexual desires of the men it chooses to involve itself in. That's a female saga in the 21st century, and it shouldn't be. So Envoy says you don't blame men that were not there. Um, okay, so a man has a child and gets and leaves because he doesn't want to take care of his responsibility. I'm not brainwashed to know what's right from wrong. Old school music says yes, there is a distraction that needs to be greatly emphasized. Sexual hormones and intimate feelings uh, from definitely do not equate to a long-term love and stable relationships. I'm talking about the man that didn't want. Envoy says you guys are going at it. Who's out there just having raw sex with women, getting them pregnant and leaving as a coward? Uh, Brian says why have a kid? Envoy, okay, your comment got pulled. I'm trying to see what part of it though. You guys remember if I don't catch it right now, it just stays gone, so you can't even see it in the replay. Uh, okay, Brian says why have a kid just to kill it? SMH. Yeah. Well, again, it's because people don't think about long term anything at this point. Like the person who came in here and downvoted this is just saying, "Oh, I don't like this person." They're not thinking of, "Oh, is the story he's telling true? Is it actually accurate?" They're just they're here for one purpose that is momentary, and once it's over, they go back to whatever they were doing before. I mean, you have 9 people watching, 6 likes. That we could get another 2 dislikes. They don't even say what it's for. Just dislike, and just keep it moving. So I'm trying to keep up with the responses in here. But yeah, it's all in the moment. It's all emotion filled. It's not anything of any actual validity of long term planning. That is, I have an agenda right now where I have several things I have to do before I get a major project that's going to involve several subscribers, and I don't even see me getting around to actually approaching many of my those who back my stuff. Excuse me, many of those who back my stuff until about maybe I would say the earliest could be December, January. I mean, it's really going to take a long time to do what needs to be done before I can actually seriously get other people on board with this. And I have no problem saying that or admitting that because it's something that gives me enough time to make the sacrifices needed to get there at that point. And I'm saying that a lot of these parents don't see it when they lay up in bed, be they 19, 29, 39, and pop out this child. They're not thinking about, oh, in 18 years, what is its college fund going to look like? What's the economy going to be like? You know, am I going to teach it various things in school that I've retained myself when I was in the institutions? No, it's just lay in bed, get knocked up, and hang around whatever neighborhood you're in for 16 to 18 years before the cycle repeats itself over again. If it's a girl, if it's a boy, it might take a little bit longer, but it'll start itself back up. Okay, old school says new rule messages just be kept. Should just be one main comment and not multiple posts. Just keeps on scrolling up too fast. I hear you, but I don't think they hear you. The music friend, is it fiend or friend? Oh, fiend. Okay, most people shouldn't have kids. Most people are inferior. Most people don't take anything seriously anymore. Um, Cortez says, "I'm just trying to say that the deadbeat father thing was fed to the world to fool them." Brian says the kid has no say in the matter. That's messed up. Yeah, I didn't say it. Who said that? Cortez says AJ, but the women choose to get pregnant. That's correct. Music Fiend says people don't even try to see what the economy would be like for their own benefit, let alone their children. Cortez says AJ, the scenario that was fed to the world is BS. Uh, Envoy says, so what do you call it when two people have an understanding? A man is okay with having a child, but then he suddenly leaves in the middle of the night in like the 6th month of her pregnancy. I guess that's the woman's fault too in your world, right? Uh, well, one of the jokes that I've constantly heard is that with a lot of these children that are being born out of wedlock in the current era, by the time the kid's born, the day of its birth is like a gang negotiation or something. You have the guy show up with his friends to the hospital, and then they're all staring down the women's friends all aggressively. Just everybody's on each other's neck about what are you doing here, all that. You might know what I'm talking about, maybe. Who knows? Um, I'm gonna have to stop reading. I want to go back to making my point. So you guys are having this big time back and forth, and that's it's very interesting. I think it involves both people not um, doing much in the way of preparing themselves. But I want to address what Music Fiend said about most people. The scariest thing is that what caused me to kind of subside in terms of, so you'll notice that with a lot of people who interact with me on my channel, I'll respond to the same ones over and over again because I have more trust in them than the average one-time grandstanding commenter. Is that I've really started to take in the idea of just everyone around me for the most part either is here to say something that's outlandish and without any basis for investigation, or they're not serious about actually doing something. I just described to you a few days ago the woman that was working on this project of mine who literally sat here and told me, "Oh, I'll have this done tomorrow," and then a week and a half passed, and she can't even so much as send a message back to tell me what, update me. It's very aggravating. But as I was saying, um, I know it's not just women. It's a problem that is going on with both genders right now. And what it really has to do is that we don't hold parents to any standards of decency. So effectively, and this is again applicable to all ages, but I've noticed that it really feels like when you sit here and you actively know people who engage in this young parenthood lifestyle, they go from, and especially in the social media age, they go from posting pictures of themselves online, whether they're male or female, to just taking photos of their baby over and over again, and never surmounting a game plan. I mean, think about this. When you run a business, let's imagine that the 8 people in here are all businessmen and they're here to sell some profit or some other thing of value. You have to make a stock. You have to meet a demand. You have to have guidelines for how things are going to go. That's why you have these boards. That's why you have other factors involved with it. But in the current circumstance, it's like you never see people, at least especially with these parents nowadays, get together and say, okay, what are we going to do for this kid in 10 years? What are we going to do for it this year? How much we're going to save up this year for it? None of that. It's just have sex. If a kid comes out, great, and let freedom ring. Let me read what. Okay, the music fiend says, now don't get me wrong, there isn't a set way how to be a parent, but I see parents that are so lazy, it's baffling. Oh, I disagree. I think there is a set way. Um, and I didn't, people can have their own criticisms and whatnot, but my idea of just again basic parenting, because what I would want to do is, I've already accepted most people are not going to put up with or exercise the patience for. Um, Basic parenting just entails being there for the child and being able to provide for it. And I'm talking about being around physically as often as you can be, as well as allowing yourself to be that child's confidant. So obviously, if your kids, I don't know, 5 or 15, they have a problem at school, you should be consistently available for them to talk to and not feel as if they're going to be judged or, um, you know, circumvented for having a, some issue that they want to speak about. And it's that very basically is what I think would be apparent. Now, my grand thing again is it. I mean, if you heard that, you would think I'm insane, which the downvoter already fell. So it all goes back to how I was saying. Um, but I do think that one of the disadvantages, because we often associate, and that's why you have all these women talking about they like older guys, um, a certain age with a certain stature in life. We think that the guy who's 30 is automatically going to be much wealthier than someone who's 20, or the guy who's 60 is going to be more wealthier than someone who's 25. Um, and living in an era where people will lose things so often, whether it's their finances or just in a lot of cases their common sense, it gets almost laughable that they will really sit here and make themselves subscribe to this idea that, oh, because that person's that age, they have all of these things that the other guy doesn't have. And again, these are people who just off the cuff will assume something without having any proof of it. That's what's done with many of these teen moms right now. A lot of us, when we see them walking on the street, we're not going to think that they're going to kill their child or they're going to commit some act of violence that gets the kid killed at less than a year old or at any age at all. Okay, Music Fiend wrote something and it just got hidden. Uh, Love yourself before you. Okay. I hate that feeling when you so much and you want to be, but then you don't even give. Yeah. Well, that's currently we live in a selfish world. That's why. I mean, I'll put it. People get mad at that. That's why Trump got elected. It's all about me, 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 and screw everything else. That's how we vote. That's how we do most things in life. It's of our own concern. Okay, Envoy says they say a baby is safest in a mom's arm. Hearing this story, I beg to differ. This is dark times for no. That's coming out maybe the week after next week. But I wanted to touch on this because I thought it was an important and recurring theme. And again, the only reason I segmented it by race, not by race, by age, is because I knew that if I sat here and listed all, and which I will do that maybe if not a stream, but a video just of every single story per year that I can find of some parent taking the life of their child, because I want it to be understood my reason for talking about this stuff is twofold. One, I'm a sore loser. I hate the fact that people who have something that I want waste it, as I think that these parents are doing here, and I think most people would agree with that when they off their own children. But also, it genuinely disgusts me because you won't see these stories talked about anywhere other than maybe local news. You won't see them become the highlight of the hour of the top story of tonight. They're going to spend more time talking about some dumb tweet that this character put out earlier today than they will these murders, these homicides that all fit a basic category of a person who is supposed to be your most ardent defender, your backer among backers, your rock, your mother, deciding to end your life. The main person you're supposed to go to and just feel comfortable with, out the window. And it is a very disturbing thing when you can't trust immediate members of your family, um, you know, with your life, much less anything else. I actually probably said that backwards. The Cortez says the occurrence is a myth. Um, Envoy says spin it however you. Okay, you guys have been. I mean, I can't read that whole thing. I have to keep this going. VVS says, and that killer will still have options, sadly. Oh, yeah. See, I'm going to tell you something, man. Because, and this is the scariest part about that 17-year-old that was in Texas, because of her age and her youth, she'll only go to juvie. She'll get off. She'll get out in a couple of years, and then she'll be right back to dating some dude who knocks her up and lets her allow to do the same thing again. The only difference is that she might actually be of age to go to prison the second time around. So when people are sick in the head like that, they don't learn. They don't say to themselves, because remember, a lot of us get angry. We get frustrated at things. Oh, this person said this person did that. But we always keep ourselves from going overboard because we think of the long term ramifications of acting out in some egregious, over dramatic way. And the reason I'm bringing it up is to suggest that when these parents, whether they're 17, 18, 19, or 20, like in this story, um, lay up in bed, they're not thinking about next week or tomorrow or next year. It's all about the moment of getting turned on and wet and gross and sticky and real sticky before they decide to actually say to themselves, wait, what have I done? So I hope I've responded to VBS accurately. I know that he's over there taking care of. He's the only one of us that has a child. He's over there taking care of Chad. So I have to make sure he can see my comment before he goes back to helping his son out. Yeah, VBS is the only one with a child, and Envoy is the only one who's been married. They're the oddities among this stream of users. Envoy's gonna stop responding when his wife grabs his ear and she lures him back to their bedroom. I'm just giving some foreshadowing to who's he arguing with again? To Cortex. Okay, the music fiend says humans with their primal urges pump out kids without any funds provide for the child. Yeah. Um, Old school says yes. The media portrays the man as the one to run off with the fumes, is accountable by the actions for not caring for the child properly. It's not just the caring because I can accept the fact that my mom didn't, you know, pay for any of my stuff that actually mattered, but she at least kept a roof under my head. These mothers literally, they're not, they don't have jobs. They get on the county, and then they destroy you while reaping the benefits of opening their legs to, Mario from down the street. And to quote Envoy, the sex is more important than life. It certainly seems so. Okay, to respond to the music fiend, the primal urges. I'm trying to think of a way to address this without. So one of the things, like, and I've tried to make this point, is that I personally think if you got two people, whether they were 20 or 19 or whatever working, age that allows them to have to be employed at, some level where they can go to school and work a job, I think they would be more successful if they in taking care of a child than a 30 or 40-year old male or female by themselves. And that's because when you have two people, I think, just in general, if you get two competent people, that overrules one. But if you have two individuals, for example, let's say the dad works during the morning, the mom can take care of the kid during the morning. The mom works during the night. The dad can take care of take care of the kid during the night. It's never been easier to strategize when it comes to parenting than the current era. You have these jobs, and you apply them online. They ask you what time would you like to work. You could coordinate your hours. One is at home, at least for every 12 hours a day, at separate times maybe. It's just not hard. It's very simple and very easy and very just doable to adequately take care of a child and to allow it to prosper in society. If you play your cards right, strategize, it can be done. And I get so sad because I've seen it done in previous eras at the height of segregation and other types of, just awful states of living. And people don't want to accept the fact that even on a technological basis, it's already been improved. But what has to happen is people have to catch up to their technology. They have to allow themselves to accept the fact that there's no excuse for not knowing basic things when it comes to treating others as human beings. I could buy a guy who saw I never shook someone's hand before. I didn't know that was a respectful thing to do. Ugh, I'd never know to shake someone's hand because there was no technology to teach me how to do so back in the 30s or 40s. But we're talking about an era where you can literally look up anything. Missing a bunch of comments. That thing closed off. I was trying to read that and then. Yeah, music. Your school sounds very prestigious. I wish I could have gone there. The only reason I'm missing those comments, you guys are going back and forth, arguing. So, anyways, I'm gonna end the stream. I thank everyone who participated. And I just want you guys to know that I'm optimistic about the potential of children, of any race group, of any background, but they have to be away from characters who can destroy them, and oftentimes that includes their parents. You cannot allow a child, whether it be white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, to be surrounded by a mother who would be so angry as to run it over along with its father because I was drunk, even though I'm drinking underage, so it's not legal to do it in the first place. You can't allow a kid of any race to have a mother who wouldn't strap it in its seatbelt, do something that even a toddler could figure out if it tried. And really, you have to get that there is a case to be made about the fact that people, you know, genetically cause defects. But a lot of those defects, especially if they're not mental ailments, can be amended if you put these kids in circumstances to where they are not around the people who have caused them to have the plights that they were assigned at birth by having these as parents. So I want to thank everyone. Music Fiend says, I just want society to be more enlightened, or at least to strive for enlightenment instead of this attention span. Um, yeah, yeah, it's low. That's the biggest thing I could chalk it up to. But even if we see more stupidity just coming over the next 2 decades, because that's usually how long it takes for a generation to get up. I'm optimistic about the potential of kids, and I think that's an important place to start from. And like I said, I will put out a comprehensive plan of what I think would improve the lives of loads and loads of them. But it's going to take me some time to write it out, to have the presentation ready, and I hope to have that done in maybe the next 2 or 3 weeks. Stay tuned. But it's all in response to these patterns of behavior. Yeah, well, Dark Times 4 is coming in 2 weeks, so be prepared for that. I don't know about that, Brawl Vulture, but it's more of a experiment. So that again, it's being put forward by the public as a way of just showing what could be done. Um, and Brawl Vultures are 11th hour rangers. So like I said, thank you everyone who showed up. I'm gonna have something else up tomorrow. I appreciate it.